And this is The In Show. And I'm your host, Gus Summer. It's good to be back with you today. That's right, we are broadcasting live from the Sunset Strip, from our In Show studios, from the entertainment capital of the world, Hollywood. And we have a great in-studio guest, Mr. Jean-Yves Olivier. Jean-Yves, how are you this afternoon?
How are you guys? I'm fine. I'm in New York, as you know. Left Los Angeles, and I miss you already, guys.
Yes, you are a world traveler. You're here premiering your film, screening your film, Plot for Peace, and now you're back over there. What a wonderful life you live.
Yes, you know, we are very lucky. The movie is going to be seen would be shown at the State Department in Washington, and I don't want to miss it.
You know, that's fantastic, because I know it's going to be premiering in D.C., Washington, D.C. on October 31st, and in New York at the same time, and then November 5th here. It's amazing.
Absolutely. We need spectators.
Absolutely. You know, it's a fantastic film. You know, I've seen it a couple times, and there is so much to digest. You know, just your role alone, I have to say, it's extraordinary. You know, for you to be so involved in a point in, world history that is extraordinary. You know, before I get into a little bit of the plot of the movie, want to know about yourself. I know you were in cereal trades, and then you got into oil and coal, but what got you started in your commercial journey in the first place?
Oh, I am French, born in Algeria, and in 1962, Algeria became rightly independent, but because of the misunderstanding between the French living in Algeria and the Arabs, the Algerian, we were forced to leave the country, which was somehow our country as well, because our parents and grandparents were both there, and we were 1 million, and 1 million had to flee Algeria in 3 months. So that created a very big drama for me, and I decided to try another type of life than only school and studies, and of course I wanted to do international things, and the grain trade, international grain trading, cereal trading was very attractive to me, and that way I started.
I see. So it was you already had that international spirit to go abroad and do business.
Somehow, we were rejected by our homeland brothers because we were white or European and regarded as colonialists, which we were maybe not completely, and also the French, which were our mother country, if you will, rejected us. So we were somehow apartheid. And I started to be a nomad without a country.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because when you look through history, you see that there's a lot of that. People who are, who grow up somewhere else, who have a connection with that homeland, have to leave, and then when they want to go back to where their ancestors originated, there's also a displacement. You going through that, what type of advice or what have you gathered from that? Is there a way around that, or is that just the way humanity is?
When you are forced to flee your country by force, like the slave in America, or because we were opposing the local people, we are losing our roots somewhere. And of course, a human being needs to have roots, and should get inspiration from his roots. So it's a necessity somewhere to look back to where your roots are and to get inspired by that.
Yes, because how's that for you now? Do you have roots somewhere, or is the world where you lay your roots?
I'm upside down now. My roots are in the air because I'm flying so much.
Yes.
So yeah. having, and I have my feet upstairs instead of having my head upstairs.
Because that's exactly something I gathered from the film. Like basically, the heavens are where your roots are, because you always travel, and especially when you watch the film, that was your means of travel and how you contacted everyone. How is that for you? Do you mind that at all, or is it you just adapted to the lifestyle?
I'm used to, and of course, traveling gives you a unique opportunity, which is to feel the people you are talking to on a face-to-face approach. When we use telephone or even TV interview or whatever those new technology offered to us, it is not the same.
Yeah.
You feel a man when you meet the man.
Yes.
If not, it's all theory.
Yes. Wonderfully said. Wonderfully.
And no, Gus,
Yes.
if you don't go to them, they won't go to you. So I had to go to them.
Yes. That's one thing that the film is wonderfully done, because it touches a little bit of what you talked about right now, your early life and how you got into the business. And what I loved about it is that you come across as a citizen of the world, looking for humanity to come together. And I know you had talked a little bit about that in the film, about your early development. How was that developed in you to be, a citizen of the world? Was there something in particular? Was it when you had to leave Algiers?
Oh, you don't. You are not a citizen of the world. I don't like the word citizen.
Yeah.
Citizen implies automatically that it belongs to a certain culture, a certain approach, a certain vision of. I think I am much more a human being who loves other human beings
Yes.
and wish that they will be all in peace.
Yes.
At peace. At peace. Shall you say in English? At peace.
Yes, at peace. And what a perfect title for the movie, a plot for peace. Now, it's wonderful because it documents, the film documents your journey and how you interacted with these world leaders and you brought them together. Now, how was your initial relationships with them when you first approached them about these happenings, when you wanted to release the prisoners and wanted to release South African soldier? How were their initial responses to you? Were they hostile? Were they open to you?
I am somehow a broker.
Yeah.
So I was asking them to give me something, again, an exchange of something. So the exchange of something, what I was proposing to them is that they will give me their prisoner, but while doing that, they will receive a possibility to see peace be installed in Southern Africa and in South Africa particularly, and of course with the direct consequence, the release of Mr. Mandela. So, and they believe in my story. They believe that I was determined to go to the end of it, and that I have great personal support for their brother leaders in Africa. Because the leaders in Africa, they are all brothers, and they talk to each other. The telephone is an extraordinary machine in Africa. We are not talking about writing and notes and memorandum, and you just pick up your phone and a leader will call the other leader and will say, hey, I have Jean-Yves here, Olivier, I have experimented him, I trust him, you have to see him, he has something good to propose us. And this is the way it happened.
It's extraordinary because I'm watching the film, and one of the things that really jumps out at me about the film itself is that you have many of the principals who were involved in brokering these deals commenting in the movie. You had the former president of Congo. Thank you.
South Africa. Yes, of course.
Yeah, and it was them giving their perspective, and you can see that they were truly connected with you and wanted to achieve, peace. That speaks volumes for you. What, kind of self-analyzing, is it your ability to approach somebody? Is it your ability to analyze a situation that makes people comfortable and willing to talk with you and do these tremendous things?
I think it was a regard to me as a person you can trust. Yeah. I suppose that if you ask me to be in your radio station today, is because you trust me as well. And we met only for 2 minutes. So, trust, there more trust. And trust is always given by somebody to somebody, because there is somebody else whom you trust, we will guarantee that you can be trusted. It's not a little complicated, but it's a message I wanted to pass. You never enter. When I was very young and I was very interested in Africa, I had a chance to meet President Houphouët-Boigny from Côte d'Ivoire, and it was really what we call a sage in French. It was the wise man. Probably one of the wisest men I ever met in my life, and God knows that I have met some wise men in my life. And he was already quite old, and we had dinner together in Abidjan, which is the capital of Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast. And he heard about me saying, I love Africa, I want to move to Africa. And he said, at the end of the dinner, he said, one thing, Jean-Yves, never enter an African village without being introduced by somebody who is known and loved by the village. So that has been my conduct of life. I never been to any head of state, to any leaders, without being introduced by another leader who is trusted.
Fantastic. So it's basically the age-old approach of being introduced by someone who's trusted, and then they, in regard, extend their trust to you.
Exactly. Is why, and when you get older, you are even more trusted than when you are young.
Do you think it has to do with the gray hair and such, a little wisdom?
Oh, today I have more wisdom than I had at the time you mentioned, the story you mentioned.
Yes.
But maybe I was also I started to be old a little earlier than the other.
Understand. I wanted to ask you, when I was watching the film, and you're talking about when you first went to South Africa, and I loved how you talk about business, and you said you always go to locations where it's difficult. And when you went to South Africa, you felt like you were in a bit of a time machine, and you give your impressions of the times. What else was going through your mind? Did you think this would be a difficult country to do business in, or was it, something of, there needs to be more done here than just business?
Okay. I am very honest. I was there because it was difficult countries and I wanted to do business in South Africa. But very clearly, when I moved to South Africa for the first time in 1981, I realized that, of course, I always believed that the IDCOs, freedom fighters of mainly blacks, were having a just cause and they will win, because always a just cause always take over. I mean, I don't see in any part of our humanity history any good cause which has not prevailed at a certain point. But in another hand, I was seeing this group of people, those white, which are going to be killed. They were going to be thrown through the sea. And if they didn't change and they didn't accept to cooperate, to dismantle apartheid, and to build a new country together with their black brothers. And this is so, maybe I was more interested by the white than by the black. That doesn't mean that I was not interested by the black, but the cause of the black was, for me, I cried. There was no way that they were going to lose. The people who were going to lose were the white people.
And did you feel that there had to be some sort of concession from the white aspect that they had to provide additional rights and.
Oh, yes, and what a concession.
Yeah.
It was to abandon apartheid, which was the most evil thing a human being can conceive, where you cannot travel, where you cannot marry who you want, where you have no voting right, where you are practically in slavery. So it was, the concession would be for them to accept that the other South African will be equally treated. And of course, being rejected by the rest of the world, the white were very conservative and were saying, okay, nobody loves us, we have to count on ourselves to defend ourselves. And then I thought, okay, what about if the other African states will give those whites the guarantee that they will be able to build the nation with their black brothers. And this is, on this basis, I handle a negotiation, and I deliver to the white the guarantee from the black other country that they have a role to play in the new South Africa. May I ask you at just one very important thing? You know, South Africa is the only country in the world where the right of the nationality is linked to the fact that you live there. In most of the country, you have the right to be American because you are born in America. You have to be French because your parents were French. So it's always there is always how to call it a reason for you to be American or French. In South Africa, the new constitution, which has been promoted by Mr. Mandela, is very clear. If you stay 5 years and you live physically 5 years in South Africa, you are entitled to be South African. Isn't it beautiful? Isn't it beautiful that you can choose your country by just the fact that you are going to live there? This is magic.
Absolutely. Now, do you feel that's what brought a unity, that helped bring a unity in South Africa?
Exactly. The unity is based on the fact that your neighbor, yourself, the other tribes, the other people have the same right to be South African or are we African.
Amazing. As I'm watching the film, talking about this unity, I see you have clips of President Botha saying that he will not be manipulated into change. How was his approach? As this was going along, he was very hesitant, and even at the end, there was a scene where he says, my people want me to thank you, so thank you and goodbye. He seems like even up to the end, he never changed his mind, but he kind of went with the tide.
He died unhappy. And the most extraordinary thing. So as you saw in the movie, he was literally kicked out. He didn't have any more authority on his minister. The minister who were negotiating with me
Yes.
the end of apartheid. And so he resigned and he went back to his little town where he was living in the eastern part of South Africa, a town called George. And you know what Mandela did?
No.
He went to visit him.
Oh, yes.
He went to visit him. And there are those extraordinary pictures of this stubborn, racist, old-fashioned, horrible man. And Mandela paying respect to him by going to visit him because he was also part of the history of the same country they were both belonging to.
Yes. They were part. You had one with the other. It was extraordinary. As we're talking about Botha, Pete Botha was.
He was a good man, guys.
Yes.
He was a very good man. He was from the inside. He did a fantastic job because he's from the inside. He helped the end of apartheid. And one of the first things he did once the ANC was recognized and Mandela was president, he joined the ANC. He's a member of the ANC, believe it or not.
That's extraordinary. And he was in the film. He's one of the principals that, gives his point of view. And I thought that was extraordinary.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Was he, in the whole process, was he the spearhead? Was he one of the ones that really pushed this forward behind the scenes?
He was pushing. Another small anecdote. Botha was the first white Africans, the apartheid supporters, who made a statement saying that he wouldn't mind to serve under a black president. It was an official statement. When he made this statement, the whole hierarchy of the government started to be in shambles. And he was asked by the other Botha, the stubborn old man, the old crocodile, as I call him, or everybody were used to call him. He was called on, and the Botha demanded that he goes to Parliament and apologize and saying that it was not what he meant. Mm-hmm. And that evening, he was flying to Cape Town to make that to meet with President Botha. I happened to be at the same lounge in the airport in Johannesburg, and he was crying physically. He is a kind of tall, very strong man. And he was crying, and he said, "I just can't deny what I have said publicly. So I am going to resign, and this is end for me." And I took him apart, and I said, "Mr. Botha, please don't resign. Go to Parliament. Say you are sorry, you made a mistake. The good people will recognize you later. But we need you inside. You are not useful at all outside. So please apologize." It is what it is the next day in Parliament. A great cause, believe me.
What a show of character, what a strength of character to hear those wise words. And you're absolutely right. He was more useful in his position than he would be out of it. Obviously, if he had resigned, I think, in my opinion, that the outcome would have been vastly different.
Absolutely. Is why I always pay respect to him.
Did he ever mention any of the private conversations that he had with the president? Because obviously they were from different points of views, and their conversations had to have been heated.
I have to respect him because he's still alive.
Yes.
It will be to him to one day let people what were his conversation with the president. I can't tell you.
Yeah.
But they were tough, believe me.
Oh yes. I can imagine, because they're intimate. They know each other well. Again, you had the ear of presidents in Africa. You even had the ear of the assistant State Department head, Cranston, or what was his name? Crocker.
Crocker.
Yes.
Yes. Great man too.
Yes, he was there, and I loved his point blank assessment of what was happening. He said, American interests are certain. We're basically business. We're there to conduct business.
He said, don't believe that we were here just for pleasure. We were here because it was this part of Africa was very important for minerals, and so he said blankly on TV, and it is on the movie.
Yes, I thought that was a fantastic point, because he said how did he call it? He said it in a particular way, the Persian Gulf of oil minerals, or something like that.
It is the Gulf of this part of the world is the Persian. What is the Persian Gulf for oil? It is for minerals.
Yes, and he was.
He was from the Reagan administration, so you can imagine.
Yes, now talking about that, how difficult was negotiating from that point of view? That it was, business versus a humanitarian effort? Did that make it more simple? Did it make it more difficult?
Business, to be very honest, during that period of time, I gave up most of my business, and I was concentrated in just the politics, as we say. So I didn't regard the business anymore as an element of access. Business gave me the first access, the access to head of states, to cabinet minister, because I was dealing in crucial prime commodities like grains and like oils, which are at the state interest, and so the president and the ministers are taking care of that. That's the way I touch these people, and I was in contact with these people at first. When I started the negotiation, of course, business was not anymore on the table. Not anymore. It was other things took over.
Right. That was just your initial access. And remind me, there was a scene. Was it President Chissano of Mozambique that you went and were going to tell him about grain, but you actually told him about something else all completely? Was that him?
No. I wanted to meet President Sassou Nguesso from Congo.
Okay.
Who was a Marxist-Leninist, who was probably the unique African leader which was absolutely against apartheid, no compromise. And I had to convince him that he has to meet with the white South African. So I lied, and I said I wanted to meet him because I have to discuss some grain import. And so he gave me an audience, and the audience, which was planned for 50 minutes, went on for 2.5 hours. I explained to him my objective, what I was trying to do, and what I want to achieve. And maybe with the help of God, he believed me, and he played such an extraordinary role by offering his mediation, his territory for the mediation, and of course influencing other African leaders to follow him.
Yes, and when you approached him initially, you told me you were there for something else. How was his attitude? Was he taken aback, I'm sure, or was he he understood? What was his initial response?
A few days or 2 weeks ago, before I met him, he phoned the President Chirac, Prime Minister Chirac at that time of France, and he told him, he said, if you receive Mr. Botha, the old crocodile in France, then I will not be physically at the summit, French-African summit of Lomé. Lomé is in Togo, and he was a chairperson in the at that time AOU, African Union, and so Chirac had to cancel the meeting with Botha because he cannot afford that. President Sassou would not go to Lomé. So my first conversation, I started the conversation with him. He knew that I was French, of course, was to talk about that. And of course, we never talk about grain. We only talk about politics.
Yes. Because that's an intricate part of this entire story. How those talks that you had arranged collapsed. Chirac backs out, and then you had to reassess what your approach was going to be. What was your initial, thoughts or feelings when everything was falling apart?
Oh, depression. I was depressed.
Yes.
I am not somebody who give up, and I immediately started to think, okay, how could, like we say in the judo sport, you have to use the strength of someone to beat him.
Yes.
And so I was always looking for using the strength of somebody to help me to beat. And so I didn't give up, and I went to see Sassou, and lucky for me, he said, okay, let's go ahead.
Yes, that's a fantastic point, because I think that's exactly what happened. It brought it back to the continent. You think by doing that, it really strengthened your position with everything that was going to follow?
Exactly. I was strong. I was strong because I was talking as an African and not anymore as a representative of one of the G5.
Yes, yes. And because when all that was falling apart, you had to come up with a different strategy. What made you come up with the idea about Captain Tudoit to help with his release and everything?
When you have an isolated country which is under sanction, which is under hate, and at war, prisoners are taking a much more bigger dimension than in other circumstances. Look at I had in my mind, I remember the time where the Israelis, for example, will accept to deliver I don't know how many Palestinians against one of their soldiers. And I knew that the value of this man was very, very important for the army, for the morale of the army, for the white. So by getting this soldier out of jail from Africa, where he was in jail and in confinement and kept secret, I knew that I will establish a trust from the white that what I'm saying is something good, and I use also that token to be reinstalled in the trust from the white, which I have lost when Chirac refused to receive the President Botha.
Yes, because there were 6 countries that got involved in this, and
6 countries: France, Holland, Angola, South Africa, Mozambique, and a Bantustan called Siskai. But believe it or not, 135 prisoners were released that day and given back to the country they were belonging to.
yes,
In Mozambique, in a country at war itself, and not one document were signed.
yep.
Not document. There is not in any archive of any country a document which relate to this exchange of prisoners, because there was no document signed. It was my word, and they all trust me.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. I was going to bring that up. That I find that of all this had happened, that there was not one piece of paper exchange, just merely handshakes and someone's word. That's extraordinary. I think that pays such kudos to you and your efforts. Has anyone mentioned that? When you reflect on those and you talk to some of these these principles, that nothing was signed, that it would just happen. Does anyone talk a little bit in depth about that, or is that just a fact of the story?
No, I think everybody was playing a game. At the moment the press was installed on me, and I was telling, this is it. I am coming from President of Mozambique, and he has accepted to give me his airport as on date so and so for the exchange. Nobody questioned whether I was lying or not. They believe me. When I said that day, the French will send a plane to collect the French prisoner, because there was a French prisoner as well and a Dutch prisoner. The French believe me, and Dutch believe me, and so I had no problem whatsoever to
one of the things I found extraordinary, I wanted to ask you about, was the buffer zone that you created in the airport. Was that just so that the news would focus on the prisoners and the exchange, or was it to keep, hostile parties apart? Tell me about that.
Yes, I think what I wanted to do at that time is to create symbolically, as you call, a buffer zone, a no man's land, whereby if everybody goes one step further, they will discover that on the other side they were also humans like them. And this is why also I orchestrated the exchange of prisoners in a sense that they were crossing one part of the airport, going to the other part of the airport, and we crossed this buffer zone. And that was a symbol for me, that you see, if you can go away from your border where you stand now, there is another world on the other side, and go cross the no man's land, and there is another world. And maybe then the two worlds can communicate. That was symbolically very important for me.
Yes, this was a place of neutrality. We're just all brothers here, and take a look at what's at the other side.
Exactly.
I know Pink Butha was there, but he wasn't allowed to get off the plane.
Now, Butha loves cameras, loves advertisement. If he sees a microphone, he had to talk to the microphone, even there was nobody holding the microphone. That was his character. He's my brother, but he's like that.
Yes.
And he was dying because where he was, there was no camera, no microphone, and he wants to be in the image. He wants to be seen from the South African TV and everything. So here he is. Okay, is it really important? No.
And when you see the footage, he's right in the middle.
Oh yes. Oh, you're right there.
Great. I think it brought great attention. When I was watching it and hearing what you were saying, I thought it just elevated the scene even more, because here is a principal from South Africa coming all this way and greeting Captain de Duyt, and being in the middle of it. Did you get that feeling? Was that what was your take on it?
Oh yes, because listen, he wants to take the glory, and I was prepared to give him the glory because he will serve me with that glory even more than without that glory. So it was helping everybody to get him his glory because he will create credibility, even more credibility for him. So I said yes, of course.
And it worked beautifully. And I did want to ask you, so at the end of all that, we find out that the airport is empty and you're standing there without a plane.
Yes, that's right. And it was a good lesson for me. It was a good teaching for me. You see, as good you feel and how much you feel that you have done something good, maybe people forget about you.
So how did you get back? Did you have to charter a plane?
Actually, I hijacked a plane. There was still one little turboprop which I saw starting, and I literally ran, stand in front of the plane, stopped him. So they came out and they said, "What do you do? What is it?" They said, "Where are you going?" They said, "We are going to Port Elizabeth." He said, "I want to get into the plane." They said, "Okay, come in." So I fly to Port Elizabeth, and then I took a regular flight to get back to Cape Town.
So you're the broker of prisoner exchange, broker of peace, and you had to hitch a ride back home.
That's right. Yes, is it in the beautiful lesson?
It's wonderful.
It shows that you are just a normal human being. You are never a hero, and don't like to be a hero. This is wrong.
It gives you some self-perspective, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And I really appreciated it. I thought later on, oh, this is a good lesson for me.
Because from that's just somewhere in the middle of the story, because then we still go on with the freeing of Mandela and the end of apartheid and the bringing and Buddha stepping down and de Klerk coming in and freeing Mandela. What happened immediately after the prisoner exchange? Did you start getting on the phone? Yes.
The president exchange. I was the guardian of the trust. I was the one everybody trusts.
Yes.
It was time that everybody should trust each other. Is why I created this first secret conference in South Africa between all the party at war, where I created no man's land also. They were in the middle of the desert, sleeping at their tents. I choose everybody who will sleep with whom. They will share the same breakfast, the same bucket of water in the morning, of course the same dinner, the same food, and no agenda. And they discover those various leaders which were away from luxury and protocol, and but with a good glass of wine and a good whiskey if they want to, realize that the people they were fighting were just like you. They were human beings, whether they were black or white, whether they were communist or imperialist, and then after, of course, it is the process of Brazzaville, whereby the official diplomacy took over at the end, but with people who knew each other and we were ready to go to Brazzaville to achieve peace, which happened.
Yes, which is extraordinary. Now I wanted to ask you, from the beginning, did you have a ultimate goal that you hoped that would happen? And as the process went along, did you just maneuver as history rolled out, as there were failures and successes? Did you just adapt to the moment, ultimately wanting to reach your goal of ending apartheid?
Listen, when I started to move in, if somebody would have told me that I would speak to you on the radio about what I have done, I would not believe it, because you don't do things to finalize. You just do things to ease. I don't pretend that I release Mandela or I finish apartheid. My story is a small history within a much bigger history. And but at that time you don't know where you go. You don't know how long it will take. You don't know whether you are going to achieve to succeed or not. But you have this stamina. You have this envy and this joy to go further and further and further and achieve something good. And I hope I have done it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely have done it. Because when the prisoner exchange was done and everyone went home, did you see the open door for peace and the end of apartheid, and you just ran through it? Was there just like a big open door that was there?
I was convinced that I have reestablished the trust, and as I said, that I would be able to put the trust in myself to each of my plotter. You mentioned that they all came into they accepted, there are something like 16 people intervening in the film, you saw that. Not one said no. The only one who didn't come were the people who were dead. And without being too pretentious, I really sincerely believe that if Mr. Mandela's health condition would have been better at that time, I'm sure he would have accepted to say something in that movie. Winnie Mandela took over his role, and I thank my sister Winnie Mandela for doing that. But they were so happy themselves to have been part of something good. When you are part of something good, you really it boosts your morale. And if later on somebody comes to you and said, "Listen, you you are going to tell on camera that you have done something good, of course they all run. And they all run, and I love
it. We have just a few more minutes. I wanted to find out from you, as this all progressed, and you saw that, there was a potential for Mandela to be free, and the apartheid to come to an end, and de Klerk being, ready to become, president of South Africa. What were you feeling? Were you thinking, I'm almost at the end, this is almost achieved? What was going through your mind, at that point as you were reaching the end of all this?
No, it was finished for me the day Mr. Mandela was released. I haven't stopped after Brazzaville, but of course, movie producer and directors, they had to stop somewhere, so they decided to stop after the Brazzaville Accord. I have done two important things. Number one, I was informed from my white contact that the Botha, the president, the old crocodile, will go, and Mr. de Klerk will come. And before Mr. de Klerk became president, I took him secretly to many of the African countries to convince, so he can convince those African leaders that once he will be in power, he will dismantle apartheid. And that did work. By the way, I was even able to take him to President Mitterrand of France. And the other thing I have done is in Brazzaville. In Brazzaville, there was the official conference. The conference was related to the departure of the Cubans, the independence of Namibia, and that's it. And the retreat of the African troop from Angola. But I created what I have called at that time observer position. I invited the Russian, they came. I invited the Portuguese, they came. I invited two African countries, major African countries, including Cote d'Ivoire, to come, and they came. And while they were talking about the methodology, the treaty will take place, I was able to put with them the white delegation from South Africa, and we all asked them only one thing, one very simple thing. We said, listen, if you sign this agreement which has to do with independence of Namibia and the retreat of the Cubans, when you come home, we ask you one thing, is to recognize the ANC as an official party. As an official party. The ban of this party should stop. And that was the secret agreement of Brazzaville. And they did so. They came back, they recognized the ANC, and of course, automatically, Mr. Mandela was due to be released. He was released 14 months after the signing of the Accord of Brazzaville. You can see how history started to speed up and the domino effect started to happen.
Yes, extraordinary. Then we get everything we got after that agreement. Is freeing him becoming president and the end of apartheid.
Absolutely.
Amazing. There's so much to cover. The film, like I mentioned earlier, I've seen it a couple times, and there's just so much in there, and to think how much more there is that actually happened, which is extraordinary to me. Are you going to be releasing I know there's the film, will you be releasing a memoir at some point in your life?
No, I don't think there will be no more film. There is a book which has been released in France, on my autobiography, where you will see I was involved in many other conflicts, and I succeeded in many other conflicts. Of course, there is my legacy, which is my foundation for Brazzaville Foundation for Peace and Conservation, which is now taking over a lot of the things I have done in secret, and we are still very much involved for peace in many countries, and with hope of succeeding as well.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. At the end of the film, there's a statement that says, basically, what is the next game? So at this stage in your life, is there another game, or is it just a continuation of what you've been doing?
By game, we meant a specific conflict of a specific case.
Right.
I changed that into a more general approach, which is my foundation, which would be my legacy.
Yes, yes. And when you do speaking engagements, when you talk, for instance, after the screening, like we had talked, people just seem to gravitate to you and want to find out so much more. How is that? That people want to grasp, history from you who actually experienced it. What feelings and their thoughts come to you?
Shall we call it curiosity? I think people are always, it is true that somewhere in the world, one day we discovered that Mr. Mandela was released and the apartheid was dismantled. After 27 years, and more even than that, because the ANC was born in 1912.
Yeah.
But nobody asked, but how suddenly everything starts to speed up, and in the few months, we have now a new rainbow nation, a new country, coming from the state of war and civil war and hate and evil laws. It was, as I said, those things happen because there are many small stories which make the big story.
Yes, yes. Because I can see why people would want to talk with you. Because it's one thing from learning from a professor that has read and studied as an expert, versus someone who actually was a part of it and continues to be a part of history. That's extraordinary. People are just drawn to that. You feel like you're a professor in just life, that you have this world of knowledge you wish to share, and it's there for people to get?
Call it, I'm 70 years, and in the African tradition, a wise man is an old man.
Yes. Yes, absolutely a wise man. We're getting down to the last few minutes, Jean-Yves. I know the film will be screening in Washington, D.C., October 31st, and also in New York.
Spectators, guys. We need spectators because beyond the film, there is a message.
Yes.
Beyond the film is not a film, as a movie, as a documentary. I hope that this movie will be seen by a lot of people. Number one, it will help my foundations, and I need some help, not financially, but morally and supportively. But also, I believe that it's time that in the time of computers, where a young man, a young person is behind his computer, and by clicking yes or no, I love or I hate on his keyboard, he believes that he has done something for humanity, and he's satisfied with that. He thinks he has done his duty. I think that should change. We have to show the young people that there is something happening outside where they should be part of. They should move. They should get out of their home. They should participate what is the future of humanity physically, not only behind a computer. And I hope this movie will give them the envy to do something, because it shows that when you are a human, and I was young, I was 35 years or young, 30 years younger than I am today. When you are young, you can be alone, you can be despair. If you really want something, if you really want to do something good for your surrounding, for your people, there is a way to do it. Don't give up. And I hope this movie is going to be seen by the most, and they will get interest to see the movie, they will get interest to see the story, but more than that, they will be interested to repeat what I have done or what my plotter has done, maybe at a little smaller scale, but we don't value the scale. The scale has no value. At the moment you do something, is you do something.
Yes, absolutely. And your foundation, if someone wants to become a part of what you're doing, they can find you on the website, of course, and find it through those links.
The website is one word, Brazzaville Foundation for Peace.
Beautiful. And the film is called Plot for Peace.
Foundation for Peace.org. R-O-J.
Wonderful, wonderful. And on
and you are most welcome to join us in my foundation, and no letters will be left unanswered.
Oh, wonderful. And again, the film's going to be...
Money. Can you imagine? I'm promoting a foundation where I don't ask for money.
Yes. Yes, it's very rare.
I need goodwill, I need people enthusiastic, and I need people who wants to do a little pass with me.
Yes, yes. I think it's extraordinary. Again, Jean-Yves, what a wonderful life you have lived, and what an extraordinary man. From from being displaced from a young age to finding your calling in business, and then finding your calling as a broker of peace in some of the most hostile regions in the world, and being a part of freeing Mandela and being part of ending apartheid. What a epitaph that will leave. If you could sum up your life in a sentence, what would you say?
I was a man.
I was a man. Fantastic. Fantastic. Jean-Yves, again, we're at the end of the show. Thank you for, taking the time.
Thank you for calling me. And whenever you want me online, I will be there.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you again. Hang on. I'm just going to do my end of the show and just want to talk to you a little bit afterwards. Jean-Yves, again, thank you very much.
Thank you to you.
Hey, well, this is Gus Summers, and you've been listening to The In Show. We had in-studio guest, Mr. Jean-Yves Olivier, who is basically a living history professor, someone who has touched lives and touched history and has made tremendous change. So his film is called Plot for Peace, and it will be debuting in Washington, D.C. and New York on October 31st, and in Los Angeles, November 5th. I've had a chance to screen it both times, and there is so much there. And definitely look for him online and his foundation, and be a part of history. Not just, like he said, a person who clicks yes or no on your computer, but actually gets your hands in there and does something. But fantastic. And of course, you can look for all this information and this interview on theinshow.com, and where you'll be able to hear this interview once again, and we'll provide you with links to his film and his foundations there as well. Of course, look for us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, Pinterest, all those great social media sites. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, Gus has left the building.